This is the heartless one, the evil monster. Who dare you take the lives of my daughter Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico? I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them. And they also trusted you. The heartless monster, and then you take them out like trash.
August 13th, 2018. 5:17 a.m. A neighbor's doorbell camera activates, motion detected. On the grainy footage, a man walks back and forth between his garage and his truck. He lifts objects, loads them, returns for more. The movements are deliberate, almost rehearsed. Inside the quiet Colorado home were his pregnant wife and their 2 young daughters. None of them would be seen alive again. Hours later, when officers asked him a simple question, "Where is your family?" the explanation he gave unraveled faster than anyone expected. And what investigators would uncover over the next 3 days would become one of the most chilling and perplexing family murders in recent American history. But before the nation knew his name, before the televised plea, before the confessions and contradictions, there was a family that, from the outside, appeared to be thriving. So what happened behind closed doors? What was missed? What was ignored? And how does a husband and father reach a moment where he decides his family cannot continue to exist? This is the case of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico Watts. And the man who took everything from them. Shanann Watts was 34 years old, organized, determined, and always documenting the life she worked hard to build. Her Facebook page showed beach trips, holiday mornings, and videos of her 2 daughters laughing in the living room. To many watching online, she radiated energy, confidence, and gratitude. But how much of someone's life can truly be understood through a screen? And what important details does social media never reveal? Her husband, Chris Watts, 33 years old, worked as an operator for Anadarko Petroleum, quiet, polite, reserved. To the neighbors on Saratoga Trail, he was the man who waved from the driveway and hardly raised his voice. A father who lifted his children into his arms on warm summer evenings. Their daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, were the center of their world. At least, that's how it appeared. Bella, with her shy smile and missing tooth, loved to sing for the camera. Celeste, Cece, rushed into every moment headfirst, fearless and bold. And then there was Nico, the son they were expecting. Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant. They had already chosen his name. On June 19th, Shanann posted a photo of Chris placing his hands gently on her baby bump. The caption read, "I love this man, he's my rock." But only 2 months later, something had changed. And that change was so dramatic, so fast, that friends would later ask, "How did no one see the fracture forming?" On these days, everything stopped. August 13th began like any other Monday, except Shanann never made it to her 10 a.m. doctor's appointment. She never answered her phone, she didn't text anyone. For someone known for constant communication, complete silence was alarming. Why wasn't she responding? Why wasn't she home? And where were the girls? Hours earlier, at 1:48 a.m., her friend Nicole Atkinson had dropped her off after a work trip. Ring doorbell footage captured Shanann walking toward her front door, suitcase rolling behind her. She never walked back out. By noon, Nicole was uneasy. She had known Shanann for years. This wasn't a missed text, this was out of character. And in cases of missing persons, early instincts from those closest are often the first warnings. Nicole drove to the Watts home. Shanann's Lexus was still in the driveway, no movement inside, no response to knocks, no messages, just nothing. What happened in those hours between 1:48 a.m. and sunrise? Where could Shanann have gone without her phone, her purse, or her car? And why would she leave behind the items she always relied on? At 1:48 p.m., Frederick police officer Scott Coonrod arrived for a welfare check. He circled the property, knocked on the doors, tried the locks, everything was silent, until a truck pulled into the driveway. Chris Watts stepped out. Here comes the first lies. Chris told Officer Coonrod he'd been at work for most of the morning. He said Shanann had taken the girls on a playdate. He didn't know where. He seemed surprised the police were there. But when officers entered the house, something felt wrong immediately. Shanann's purse was on the counter. Her phone, her lifeline, was upstairs on the nightstand. Her medication, vital for managing lupus, was left behind. The girls' car seats were still in the garage. If Shanann left with the children, how did she leave without the car seats? If she intended to spend the day out, why was her purse still inside? And why would she suddenly disappear without telling a single person? Nicole stood in the living room and said what everyone was thinking. Shanann wouldn't leave. Not without telling someone. Not like this. By evening, Shanann and the girls were officially missing. And the quiet, polite husband was suddenly the center of an urgent investigation. What Chris didn't know was that a crucial piece of evidence was only steps away, across the street. On those moments, neighbor Nate Trina-Stick lived directly across from the Watts home. His security camera faced the driveway, something Chris didn't seem to consider when he told police Shanann and the girls left that morning. When detectives asked Nate if they could view his footage, he opened it without hesitation. And there it was.
What's that? Loaded my stuff up, my coolers, my water jugs, my book bag, my computers, some of the tools that I had in my toolbox. I knew I was going to
5:17 a.m. Chris Watts backing his work truck into the garage, a position that was unusual, and to those who knew him, immediately out of routine. He moved back and forth from the garage to the truck, carrying items. Large, bulky, wrapped. Nothing identifiable, but nothing ordinary. Detectives paused the video. They watched Chris's posture, his speed, his focus. If Shanann had left with the girls, why wasn't she seen on this footage? Why didn't the children appear at any point? And what exactly was Chris loading into the back of his truck at dawn? When Nate casually mentioned that Chris never backs his truck in like that, investigators noted it. Small deviations often reveal larger truths. Chris, standing in Nate's living room, watched the footage too. His hands were on his head, he rocked slightly, his breathing changed, his face pulled tight. His reaction raised a pressing question: was he nervous because his family was missing, or because he knew exactly what this footage showed? To detectives, the answer was becoming clearer. Chris's story didn't match the evidence. And the more he talked, the deeper the inconsistencies became. Now here comes the interview that raised red flags. By the afternoon of August 14th, Chris sat down with local news outlets, pleading for the safe return of his family. But something was off. His tone was flat, almost emotionless, his gaze drifted. He referred to Bella and Celeste as those girls instead of my girls. At moments where most people would break down, Chris remained strangely composed. Behavioral analysts would later describe it as detachment. Detectives watching the footage saw something else. A man trying to sound worried, without actually appearing worried. Why wasn't he crying? Why wasn't he asking more questions? Why didn't he express fear for the children? And why, during a missing persons case, did he show more concern about being accused than about finding his family? Police already had the surveillance footage. They had Shanann's phone, they had the abandoned car seats, they had the timeline that didn't align. Now they had a televised interview showing a husband who didn't appear distressed. But the most revealing piece of the puzzle came from his phone records. The second life he hid. When investigators pulled Chris Watts' phone data, they expected to find routine calls, texts, and perhaps marital tension. What they found instead was an affair he had actively concealed. Her name was Nikki Kessinger, a 30-year-old contractor who worked at the same petroleum company. Their relationship had begun in June. By July, they were spending hours together. Chris told Nikki he was separated. That the divorce was nearly done, that he was building a new life. And Nikki believed him. Phone logs showed late-night conversations, Google searches for romantic getaways, photo exchanges, plans and promises. On July 24th, Chris researched, how much is a divorce in Colorado? On August 4th, when to say I love you for the first time. Just 9 days before the murders, Chris took Nikki on a weekend trip to the Great Sand Dunes. They hiked, they took pictures, they slept in the truck together under the night sky. Nikki later told investigators it was the happiest weekend of her life. But while Chris was building a fantasy, Shanann was documenting a painful reality. Texts to her friends revealed concern, distance and emotional withdrawal. She wrote, "He doesn't touch me anymore, he doesn't kiss me, he told me he's not sure if he loves me." Something was shifting. Fast and dangerously. And detectives needed to know, was this affair the motive? Or was there something deeper? Either way, one thing was certain, the version of Chris presented online was not the man investigators were now uncovering. Now the interrogation begins. On August 15th, detectives brought Chris into the Frederick Police Department. He wasn't under arrest, but they needed answers. FBI agent Tammy Lee and CBI agent Graham Coder led the questioning. They were patient, they were calm, but they were direct. For hours, Chris repeated the same story. Shanann left with the girls, he didn't know where they went, he didn't know why she wouldn't answer. But the footage proved otherwise, the phone records contradicted him. And the evidence inside the home made his explanation nearly impossible. After 3 hours, Agent Lee looked at Chris and said the words that shifted the entire investigation. "Chris, would you take a polygraph?" He agreed. What he didn't know was that polygraphs are less about results and more about watching how a person behaves while being tested. Chris failed badly, almost immediately. When the results came back, Agent Coder leaned forward and said, "Chris, we know Shanann didn't leave that house on her own. Your story doesn't match the evidence." And for the first time, Chris's confidence cracked. But what he said next wasn't the truth. It was another lie. And it would take days before investigators discovered what really happened inside that home. The detectives moved slowly through the hallway, stopping at every detail that didn't align with the scene they expected. An overturned lamp, a picture frame placed face down on the floor, a drawer half open, but nothing inside it disturbed. To investigators, these weren't random objects, these were choices, deliberate placements. Small signals left by someone who wanted the crime to look a certain way. But why? Who benefits from a staged scene? And what would they gain from making a home invasion appear genuine? Detectives remained cautious, they couldn't jump to conclusions, not yet. While forensics began their work, officers quietly canvassed the neighborhood. Who had been awake, who had seen unusual activity, who was acting nervous, or conveniently uninvolved? Some neighbors offered nothing. Some claimed they heard sounds but weren't sure what they meant. And some spoke with a level of confidence that raised more questions than answers. Back inside the home, investigators found something else, small, but impossible to overlook, a single footprint. Not large, not deep, but perfectly placed near the kitchen tile. Was it left during the struggle? Or after it? And more importantly, why did it face away from the point of entry? If someone broke in, why would their first instinct be to walk deeper into the home instead of toward the door they supposedly smashed through? Detectives paused. Silent, thinking. The victim's phone rested on the counter, undisturbed. Unlocked, screen lit. A half-written message frozen in place. Who was she trying to contact? Did she see something moments before the attack, or was she about to reveal something someone didn't want exposed? Detectives ordered an immediate digital extraction. They needed answers, fast. Outside, the medical examiners then waited quietly. As the victim's body was transported, investigators stood motionless, watching, each of them asking the same question: what happened in this house before sunrise? And more importantly, who knew it would end like this? The investigation hadn't just begun, it had already taken a sharp turn. Someone out there knew more than they were admitting, someone had a connection to this home. Someone had a reason, personal, emotional, or financial, to make sure the truth stayed hidden. But how long could they hide it? Because every staged detail, every footprint, every missing item, every digital trace, was slowly forming a pattern, one that pointed not toward a stranger, but toward someone much closer. Perfect. Let's move into the next phase of the story, focusing on the surveillance evidence, the unraveling of Chris's story, and the investigation leading to the confessions and recovery of the bodies. Now let's unravel lies, through the surveillance footage. By now, detectives had reviewed every available piece of surveillance footage. The video from Nate Trinesticka's doorbell camera was the clearest evidence. 5:17 a.m. Chris Watts appeared on screen, moving large items into his truck. No Shanann, no Bella, no Celeste. He had told police she left voluntarily with the children. The footage proved that was impossible. Detectives noticed something else. Chris's movements were deliberate, careful, almost practiced. There was no hesitation, no panic, and no sign of distress. Why did he act so calmly while his family was missing, and what was he trying to hide, or stage? Neighbors were interviewed again. Some had noticed unusual activity, some had heard noises too faint to interpret at the time. But none could reconcile the footage with the story Chris had told investigators. It became clear, this was not a random disappearance. It was orchestrated, planned, and the perpetrator was in plain sight. The affair and motive emerges. Chris's phone records painted an even darker picture. His affair with Nikki Kessinger wasn't casual, it was obsessive. Constant texts, calls, and carefully timed meetings indicated an intense, secret relationship. Investigators noticed searches that hinted at premeditation. How much is a divorce in Colorado? How to calculate volume of a body? When to say I love you for the first time? Meanwhile, Shanann's texts revealed growing concern. He doesn't touch me anymore, he doesn't know if he loves me. Why didn't anyone notice the mounting tension in the household? Was it the secrecy of the affair, the closeness of the family, or the isolation of suburbia? What's clear, Chris Watts was considering a new life, without his wife and children. But how far would he go to achieve it? And when did planning turn into action? The interrogation and polygraph. On August 15, Chris Watts sat down with investigators. He was cooperative, but cautious. For hours, he repeated the same story. Shanann left with the children. He didn't know where they went, he didn't know why she wouldn't answer her phone, but his story didn't match the surveillance footage. It didn't match the timeline, it didn't match the items left behind in the home. Then came the polygraph. Chris agreed to take the test. His heart rate, breathing, and verbal hesitations betrayed him. He failed, badly. Investigators confronted him again. Chris, your story doesn't match the evidence. We know Shanann didn't leave the house voluntarily. We know you were the last person with them. For the first time, his composure cracked. Yet even then, his words were not the truth, they were another lie. What happened inside that home? Who was in danger? And why was he still able to keep investigators off balance for hours? Don't forget, we are about to bring something shocking revelation to you. Finally, Chris led police to a remote oil field owned by his employer, Anadarko Petroleum. The sun was high, grass reached past waist height, the heat was oppressive. He stopped at a shallow grave and pointed. Let's take a look on the environment he buried his family. Shanann Watts, was 15 weeks pregnant, buried face down. 2 large oil tanks loomed nearby. Inside, detectives would soon find Bella and Celeste. The scene was shocking, but forensic evidence revealed even more disturbing details. Bella had bite marks on her tongue, hair was clutched in small hands, she had fought for her life. How could someone commit such acts against their own children? What motivated a father to plan and execute the murder of his entire family? On November 6, 2018, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to 9 counts, including first-degree murder and unlawful termination of a pregnancy. By pleading guilty, the trial, and the potential trauma to Shanann's family, was avoided. On November 19, he was sentenced to 5 life sentences plus 48 years, without the possibility of parole. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico were laid to rest together in Aberdeen, North Carolina. Let's watch what really happened in the courtroom after his sentence. First is Shanann Watts' father.
This is the heartless one, the evil monster. Who dare you take the lives of my daughter Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico? I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them. And they also trusted you. The heartless monster, and then you take them out like trash. You disgust me. They were loving and caring people. You may have taken their bodies from me, but you will never take the love they had for me. They loved us more than you will ever know. Because you don't know what love is. Because if you did, you would not have killed them. You monster. Thought you would get away with this. I don't know how. The cameras do not lie. You carry them out like trash of the house. Yes. I seen the videotape. You buried my daughter Shanann and Nico in a shallow grave, and then you put Bella and Celeste in huge containers of crude oil. You heartless monster. You have to live with this vision every day of your life, and I hope you see that every time you close your eyes at night. Oh, I forgot. You have no heart or feelings or love. Let me tell you something. I will think of them every day of my life, and I love them every day of my life. Prison is too good for you. This is hard to say, but may God have mercy on your soul. I hope you enjoy your new life. It's nothing like the one you had out here. May the courts have no mercy on you. It's hard every day. It hurts in so many ways. I have heard people say that you're not a monster. No, you are not. You're an evil monster. Thank you. Love you, Shanann, Bella, and Nico. Love you, Pop Up and Dad. And one other thing. And Shanann says she is super excited for justice today. Thank you, Your Honor.
Let's listen to Shanann Watts' mom's last word in court.
Good morning, Your Honor. Thank you for this moment.
I can just have you just identify yourself for the record.
My name is Sandra Rusak, Shannon's mother. I wanted to say thank you for this moment. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who has prayed for our beloved family, who had sent gifts, cards to us from all over the world. I know God will put the evil people where they need to be. I also want to take the time to thank the town of Frederick, Greeley, FBI, the DA's office, the CBI, for exceptional work. We thank Nicole Atkinson, Shannon's neighbor Nathan, and his family. To me, they're our heroes. They really are. God bless. God makes no mistakes on who He puts in your life. Marriage is about love, trust, and friendship and unity. We marry for sickness and health, to death do us part. Our daughter Shanann loved you with all of her heart. Your children loved you to the moon and back. Shannon's family was her world. Shanann put a crown on your head. But unfortunately, the day that you took their life, God removed that crown. We loved you like a son. We trusted you. Your faithful wife trusted you. Your children adored you, and they also trusted you. Your daughter Bella Marie sang a song proudly. And I don't know if you got to see it, but it was, "Daddy, you're my hero." I have no idea who gave you the right to take their lives. But I know God and his mighty angels were there at that moment to bring them home to paradise. God gives us free will. So not only did you take the family of four, your family of four, you took your own life. I want the world to know that our daughter and her children were so loved by us. There will always be protected by God and his mighty angels. I didn't want death for you because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now, and I pray that he has mercy for you. From Shannon's mother, Bella Marie, Celeste, Catherine, and Nico Lee's Nana. Thank you, Your Honor.
Third was Cindy Watts, Chris' grandmother. Let's
Cindy
hear what
Watts.
she tried to say.
My name is Cindy Watts. I am the grandmother of two beautiful granddaughters, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine Watts. I am also the mother of Christopher Watts, who I will be directing most of my statement to. First, I'd like to begin by recognizing the absolute horror of this crime and acknowledging the devastating loss that both the Rusek family as well as our family have faced. Our families have been irreparably broken by the needless deaths of Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico. This is something we will never get over. We will always mourn the loss of our family, and in that, we are united in our grief. I am still struggling to understand how and why this tragedy occurred. I may never be able to understand and accept it, but I pray for peace and healing for all of us. Now to my son Christopher. I have known you since the day you were born into this world. I have watched you grow from a quiet and sweet, curious child who Bella reminded me so much of, to a young man who worked hard in sports and later mechanics to achieve your goals. You are a good friend, brother, father, and son. We have loved you from the beginning, and we still love you now. This might be hard for some to understand, how I can sit here under these circumstances and tell you, although we are heartbroken, although we can't imagine what could have led us to this day, but we love you. Maybe you can't believe it either. As the Lord said in Jeremiah 3:31, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, I have continued my faithfulness to you. And you, as your mother, Chris, I have always loved you, and I still do. I hate what has happened. Your father and sister and I are struggling to understand why. But we will remain faithful as your family, just as God remains faithful because of his unconditional love for us all. We love you, and we forgive you, son.
Judge, if I could read Mr. Watts' statement. My name is Ronnie Watts, and I am the grandfather of Bella, Celeste, Nico Watts, and I am the father of Shanann. I am the father of Christopher Watts as well. And one of the most important things I've done in my life is to raise my children and to watch as they started their own families. I spent many years coaching Little League and talking to my son, taking him to the races, and sharing my love and knowledge of cars with him. He was just as involved with his girls. I believe he loves his girls. I know he does. This tragedy has impacted my family in so many ways. Beyond losing my precious grandchildren, our beloved daughter-in-law, we are forced to question everything. We still don't have all the answers, and I hope one day, Christopher, you can help us. Chris, I want to talk to you as a father and son. You are here today accepting responsibility, but I want to tell you this now. I love you. Nothing will ever change that. And I want you to find peace. And today is your first step. The Bible says if we confess our sins, God is faithful and just and will forgive us. Chris, I forgive you, and your sister forgives you, and we will never abandon you, and we love you. Dad. Judge, thank you for the opportunity to address the court.
Closing was the lawyer of Shanann Watts' family. His final address to the courtroom before the judge delivers his judgment.
Fully describe the unimaginable tragedy that brings us before this court today. By my comments, I'm not even going to try to express the horror, the pain, or the suffering that the defendant has caused to these families, to this community, and to all who were a part of this investigation. However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime, as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how? Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today, nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened or why. Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses to such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this: the defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives. Not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old. She had married the defendant in November of 2012. Over the weekend leading up to August 13th, she had been at a work conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and returned home in the early morning hours of August 13th. We know that she got home about 1:45 in the morning. The doorbell camera on their home shows her arriving back home from the airport. Shortly thereafter, at least according to the defendant, they had what he referred to as an emotional conversation about the state of their marriage and about what their lives would look like going forward. What was said during that emotional conversation, only he knows. What we do know is that shortly after that, the defendant strangled her to death with his own hands. We know that he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI. If that were the case, you would expect to see vicious, horrible bruising about her neck, shoulders, and face. You would expect to see the hyoid bone in her neck broken. You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. None of those are present. The only injuries that were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. We know that our experts will tell us that it takes 2 to 4 minutes to strangle someone to death manually with their own hands. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable. Even worse, what must Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, must have experienced or thought as their father, the one man on this planet who was supposed to nurture and protect them, was snuffing out their lives. They both died from smothering. Let me say that again. The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Why? Imagine the horror in Bella's mind as her father took her last breaths away. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum, had a centimeter and a half laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times before she died. She fought back for her life as her father smothered her. Celeste had no such injuries. In fact, she had no external injuries at all. But according to the medical examiner, she was smothered nonetheless. The defendant then methodically and calmly loaded their bodies into his work truck, not in a hasty or disorganized way. He was seen from the neighbor's doorbell camera, backing his truck into the driveway, going back and forth into the house and back out to the truck 3 different times, 1 time for each of their bodies. He then drove them away from their family home 1 final time, intent on hiding any evidence of the crimes that he had just committed. In one final sign of callousness for his wife, his daughters, and their unborn son, and their remains, he drove them to a location that he thought no one would ever find them, to one of the oil tank batteries with which he was so familiar. He knew this was safe. He had texted a coworker the night before saying, "I'll head out to that site. I'll take care of it." He had carefully ensured that he would be alone in the middle of the plains to secrete away the remains of his family in a place that he hoped they would never be found. In one final measure of disrespect for the family he once had, he ensured that they would not be together, even in death, or so he thought. He disposed of them in different locations. He buried Shanann and Nico in a shallow grave away from the oil tanks. Bella and Celeste were thrown away in the oil tanks at this facility. Different tanks, so these little girls wouldn't be together in death. Imagine this, Your Honor. This defendant took those little girls and put them through a hatch at the top of an oil tank, 8 inches in diameter. Bella had scratches on her left buttocks from being shoved through this hole. A tuft of blonde hair was found on the edge of one of these hatches. The defendant told investigators that Bella's tank seemed emptier than CC's because of the sound that the splashes made. These were his daughters. Significantly, when his co-workers arrived at the tank battery later that morning, to a person, they all described him as acting completely normally. It was a normal workday, even while his daughter sank in the oil and water not far away from him. And then his efforts at deception truly began. We've all seen the emotionless interviews that the defendant gives to the local media asking for help in locating his family. We watched as he claimed that the house was empty without them, and that he hoped that they were somewhere safe, and that he just wanted them to come home. He told investigators that they were at home sleeping when he left for work that morning, and that Shanann had told him that she was taking the girls to a friend's house for the day. What is striking about this case, Your Honor, beyond the horrors that I've already described to you, is the number of collateral victims that he created by his actions. While he stood in front of TV cameras asking for the safe return of his family, scores of law enforcement officers, neighbors, friends, and family scoured the area, fretted for their safe return. They texted him begging for any information and sending him their best wishes, all the while he hid what he had done. The list of indirect victims does not end there. Think of the firefighters and the Colorado State Patrol hazmat experts who had to don protective suits and who were called upon to pull Bella and Celeste out of those oil tanks. or the coroner employees who had to conduct these autopsies, or the victim assistants who frantically attempted to ease the suffering of those affected. All of this, Your Honor, for what? Why? Why did this have to happen? His motive was simple, Your Honor. He had a desire for a fresh start, to begin a relationship with a new love that overpowered all decency and feelings for his wife, his daughters, and unborn son. While Shanann texted the defendant over and over again in the days and weeks leading up to her death, attempting to save her marriage, the defendant secreted pictures of his girlfriend into his phone and texted her at all hours of the night. While Shanann sent the defendant self-help and relationship counseling books, one of which, ironically enough, was thrown in the garbage, he was searching the internet for secluded vacation spots to take his new love in researching jewelry. And while Shanann took the girls to visit family in North Carolina, the defendant went to car museums and the sand dunes with his new girlfriend. The stark contrast between the subjects of their internet and text content is absolutely stunning. Even the morning after he killed them and disposed of their bodies, he made several phone calls. One was to the school where the girls were supposed to start, telling the school that the girls would not be coming to school anymore, that they were being unenrolled, presumably to give him some more time before law enforcement notification about them going missing. He contacted a realtor to start discussing the selling of his house, and he texted with his girlfriend about their future. None of this answers the questions of why, however. If he was this happy and wanted a new start, get a divorce. You don't annihilate your family and throw them away like garbage. Why did Nico, Celeste, Bella, and Shanann have to lose their lives in order for him to get what he wanted? Your Honor, justice demands the maximum sentence under the agreement reached by the parties. As you will recall, the agreement calls for life sentences as to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and all of those to run consecutively to one another. It also calls for the count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy as to Nico to run consecutively to counts 1, 2, and 3. I would suggest that the extreme aggravation present in the defendant's conduct and in the efforts that I have described mandate that the sentences for counts 7, 8, and 9, the tampering with the deceased human body, each be the maximum of 12 years, and that those sentences run consecutively to one another. It is very clear that each of these acts, that these were not the subject of one act, but each oil tank that he walked up with his daughter's bodies and the hole that he dug for his wife and unborn son mandate a mandatory consecutive sentence. It's been alluded to this morning, but the defendant was certainly eligible for the death penalty in this case under the existing law in the state of Colorado. As you heard, Shanann's family strongly opposed my office seeking the death penalty and being bound to the criminal justice system for the next several decades. That's in large part, as you've heard, why we have reached the agreement that we have. 4 lives were lost at the hands of the defendant on August 13th for reasons that we will never fully understand, nor will we know. In the end, the Rusick family was much more merciful towards him than he was towards his wife, his daughters, and his unborn son. Prison for the remainder of his life is exactly where he belongs for murdering his entire family. Thank you.
You seeking 91 days to file a request for restitution?
I am, Your Honor, please.
Now let's pay attention to the judge as he delivers his judgment.
Shanann
Let's
Watts,
watch.
The court is going to sentence you, sir, to a life sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections, followed with no possibility of parole. And that is going to run consecutively to all but counts 3 and 4. With regard to count 2, as it relates to murder in the first degree with Bella, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to count number 3, the court is going to sentence you as it relates to Celeste to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder. Recognizing the unlawful termination of pregnancy for the unborn child that has been named Nico, the court absolutely believes that the maximum sentence of 48 years would be appropriate to run consecutive to the other charges, with an additional mandatory parole period of 3 years as set forth by statute. With regard to count number 7, as it relates to tampering with a deceased body, as well as counts 8 and 9, each a class 3 felony, the court is going to impose a maximum sentence of 12 years each for those counts to run consecutively to the other counts. The court is going to order that statutory fees be paid and court costs. The court's going to grant the prosecution 91 days to file a notice of restitution, and that will be the sentence of the court. We will shortly be in recess. I would respectfully ask the parties that you remain in your seat. There is a plan by the deputies on allowing people to exit the courtroom, so please remain seated until you are authorized to leave the courtroom based on the direction of the deputies. Deputies, I would respectfully ask that you take this defendant into custody and have him serve the rest of his life in the Department of Corrections. We are in recess.
Please rise.
That was so tragic. How could he have done that to his innocent family, including his little beautiful daughters? This kind of humans shouldn't exist. This is a heartless act. I have been on tears since I'm covering this story. Let continue. Their headstone reads, "In loving memory of the Razusek family." Yet even after the sentencing, questions lingered. Could Nikki Kessinger have known more? Or could someone have stopped Chris earlier? How does a family appear normal, happy, and thriving, while a tragedy like this quietly unfolds behind closed doors? Shanann Watts fought for her family. She documented every moment because she was proud. She loved fiercely. Bella and Celeste were bright, curious, and fearless. Nico never took his first breath. Chris Watts stole all of that, not in a moment of rage, not in self-defense, but because he wanted a different life. We remember them not for the horror of their deaths, but for the brightness of their lives. For the love they gave, for the joy they brought, for the small, precious moments that can never be taken away. And in remembering, we ask the same haunting question: could anyone have stopped it? We may never know the answer. But their story will not be forgotten. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, True Crime Archive brings to you daily and seasonal updates on crime happening without your knowledge, so do well to like, share and subscribe for more events. And don't forget to watch our previous video that might interest you. Stay safe out there.